what is paganism? If I make a claim of what paganism is, or what I think it means to be a pagan, will that make me a New Age cult guru? Let's find out. To me, paganism is survivalism. I'm sure I've heard someone else say something very, very similar before. But what is survivalism? Is there one truth to survivalism? Is there one thing about survivalism that is more important than the other? Not really. There are the most important things relative to what is most dire and what is most, I guess we could say, threatening at the time. If you dive under the water, remembering not to attempt to intake air and suck water into your lungs, that is survivalism of a sort. It's extremely short-term survivalism, but it is still survivalism nonetheless. But while you're down under the water, remembering not to suck in the water, is this probably a good time to be thinking about what you're going to be eating for dinner in 3 weeks from now? Probably not. But that's an important thing to remember for survival as well. That is also survivalism. Planning for the future, planning for your meal in a month or a week or even an hour from now. Knowing what to eat is survivalism. Most people think of survivalism as some sort of post-apocalyptic camping adventure, sitting around eating canned food in a bunker or around a fire, living in tents. That's some sort of survivalism too, I guess, but it's still not very long-term survivalism. Months, years at best. The priorities in life are this. Determined by what you can live without the longest, or cannot live without for the shortest amount of time. The most important thing is oxygen. Oxygen to your brain. Without that, you die. All forms of death ultimately come back to no oxygen to the brain. Whether this be through blood loss, bleeding out and losing the vital fluid that carries this oxygen to your brain, or through strangulation and loss of oxygen to the brain that way. But no matter what way you can think of, death happens when you cease to have oxygen to the brain. You explode into a million pieces, you're incinerated. Oxygen stops going to your brain. That is why this is death. Everything after this is a support mechanism for that. So after blood and oxygen to the brain, the thing that we need most frequently, without it frequently we die. The next thing after that would be water and hydration. Without that, it's a matter of hours or days at best before we die from lack of water. After that, then it's food. We can go days or weeks without food. This is all priorities for survival. But beyond that, what comes next? Well, this is where the paganism survival comes in, as far as I'm concerned. Knowing your environment, knowing how to live amongst your environment. Not just for days, not just for weeks, but for generations. This is what pagan survivalism is, or paganism. Festivities. What are festivities and traditions? They're knowing what food to eat year by year, not just week by week and what to find when you're scavenging, but how to live with your environment sustainably. Sustainably is a big word to remember. So, survivalism extends beyond the weeks, beyond the months. Survivalism also goes throughout the generations. So surviving long enough to have offspring is a form of survivalism. If you're a childless individual with no one to carry on after, you're only still partaking in one generational survivalism, not really paganism. Sure, you can live on through legacy by influencing others. This is a way that you can help others survive. But survivalism, real survivalism, paganism, means carrying on after death by form of reincarnation. Reincarnation is extremely important. I personally think that reincarnation is the most important aspect of paganism and our myths, and the most important thing to be focusing on right now as far as awakening our people and surviving and saving our people. Reincarnation is the most important thing, because it's the long-term survival of our people. But what good is it knowing about reincarnation if you can't remember to not breathe when you've got your head submerged underwater? What good is it if you eat poisonous food which is going to kill your future generations when you're not around to educate them any better? Survivalism and paganism is a holistic thing. And whilst some things might be more important than others at any given time, all things must be looked at equally. So to expand on that, I guess, if you want to focus on how to hold your breath underwater, it's an important thing to do. It's a good lesson to have. You're not wrong about anything there. But it's a matter of perspective. If you want to focus on just reincarnation, that's also important. And it's extremely important too. But it's no more important than remembering not to take liquid into your lungs or to eat poison when you're hungry. The things in our myth have lessons across all perspectives of relevance for survival, not just reincarnation. To say it is so is just ridiculous. It's like if we were to have a bolt or a nut that needs to be undone, or tightened for that matter. How many tools do we have that can do this job? Many. But why have 10 or more different tools for undoing this nut if these tools don't have another function as well? If there's one tool to do this one job, there's no need for any others. So if the myths are purely about reincarnation, why do we need so many to explain it? Sure, maybe 3 or a few perhaps to overlap to make the point more clear, some sort of reaffirmation, I guess, but everything, really? No. Maybe all these myths, all these stories do have a truth about reincarnation in them. I can totally accept that. Absolutely. If you can see it and it makes sense. Only an idiot would deny it. But to say that it is the only interpretation or the only meaning, and for what purpose? What is the good that comes from making these claims? It's kind of like a sales pitch, like a new age cult sales pitch. You think there's something else to these myths? You don't get it yet, you need to buy more books. It's the kind of thing that a pot calling the kettle black would do. So if you've got a bolt to tighten and you've got 10 different tools to do it, use whichever tool suits. Whatever works best, that's fine. But to say you've got all these tools and they only all do the one same task, what a waste of tools. Not really worth remembering throughout generations, because it's only going to be mixed information after generations. Keep things simple. Simple survivalism is the survivalism which will take you the furthest. Add detail when detail is necessary. Necessity. Is it necessary to have 10 different tools to do the same job? Absolutely not. Use your brain. Why are there so many versions if they all have the same meaning? Doesn't make any sense. So if you want to make claims about what is true paganism, go right ahead. The people I appreciate are those who are actually living in nature, and no, nature is not sitting on a computer at all hours of the night tweeting telling people that they are wrong about what they do when they live an outside life. Living in nature is observing and recording and noticing patterns in nature, noticing them and testing them against function, not testing them against Google. So I guess we'll see whose paganism is most useful in a few generations' time. Who's still here? Who survives? Something that I'm not doing in order to try and survive is I don't depend on bread from vending machines. I don't forego eating food that is most readily available because of some peculiar interpretation that is extremely Christianized of a myth and story, which makes absolutely no sense. I try and work with my land so that I have a minimalist effect on it and a maximum yield from it. So that means if I'm going to plant trees and have things growing, I want to make sure that they can grow without me having to ship in truckloads of water. This kind of thing is not really sustainable. I can't live on my own without the support of civilization. Well, that's not really paganism, is it? To promote a way of life and not live it, that's not paganism, that's hypocrisy. I could say so much about this, and it will go on forever. So many things that need to be said, but where to start and where to begin? It's hard enough to say as much as I've said in as little as time as I have as well. So I'm going to keep it short enough. Stop it there. Use your own brains, pagans. Don't be sheep. Think about what kind of animal you are. Are you a dog or are you a wolf? You want to think about your ancient forebears versus what you are? Are you a lapdog? Or are you the kind of animal that will survive in the woods on your own? Because if you can't survive without the internet, if your existence is the internet, if you can't survive without 80% of your food coming from agriculture, what good are you? Not much. You're about as useful as an acorn without a pot of water to boil it in. Use your own brains, pagans. Go and live in reality.